month left of football, and it's going to be the race for the playoffs here. Teams are really starting to come into their own. So now we're going to preview the last 4 games of the season, go over the top 5 teams, also go over some news with Bill Belichick here. But we also tend to talk about movies sometimes on the show, mostly in the off season. But we just had one of the most bizarre castings come out, which was Austin Butler being cast as Patrick Bateman in a remake of American Psycho, the famous movie with Christian Bale, kind of a pop culture phenomenon right now. And it's pretty popular nowadays. So, what did you think of the guy who butchered the Elvis movie? I know you're a huge fan of that movie, being cast as Patrick Bateman.
God. Yeah, I hate it. For a couple of reasons. For one thing, not really a big fan of Austin Butler. When I think of Austin Butler, I think of the Elvis movie. And if you guys are diehard Brickyard fans like we are, uh, that movie's fucking terrible. And I reviewed it when it came out, and I said that it was fucking terrible, despite the fact that it got nominated for an Academy Award, several of them. Just a horrible, horrible movie. Now I know that's not the only movie he was in. He was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and a couple others, but my biggest beef with it is like American Psycho is more popular now than it was when it came out in 2000. So I feel like this movie, like the movie has officially been kind of coded as like the sigma male fucking meme that's been going around for the last decade. And I just feel like it's one of those movies that you can't really remake at this point because it's too touched in cultural undertones at this point. So like remaking it with Austin Butler compared to Christian Bale, I don't feel very optimistic that this is going to be a very good remake. I feel like I mean, every remake's a cash grab, but I just think it's going to be bad. And with him being casted as Patrick Bateman, I think it's going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, no, what are we supposed to get in this movie? Like Sigma Elvis, like, oh, I wake up every morning, do my sit ups here. Yeah, well, make sure I do my Pilates before I go to work. Do you know I'm the star of a big movie here? It's like Austin Butler's literally just playing a character of Elvis, and like every interview you see him in, he's still doing the Elvis voice. It's like you're like, "Oh, what's new about this movie here?" It's like, "Well, you see, the biggest thing is I'm the star of this movie. I play a huge role in it." And he just has this weird, pretentious Elvis voice, and now he's playing Patrick Bateman. Like every comment I saw was literally just Michael Scott from The Office, like, "No, no, God, no, no." Like I've seen like there's like the one comment like where, oh yeah, I can kind of see it, and everyone's just like, no, please, no. Why are you casting Austin Butler as Patrick Bateman? And my biggest beef of this is if you're gonna remake this movie, and you're probably bound to remake it at some point just for a cash grab, like Jake Gyllenhaal is out here. Jake Gyllenhaal is still making movies. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't retire. And if you just watch Nightcrawler and then you watch a movie like Southpaw or Donnie Darko, you can definitely picture Jake Gyllenhaal pulling off Patrick Bateman, maybe with a different version, but he could at least reach the same level where I just don't think Austin Butler has that gear to go to. And when you're talking about this movie, also, the director hasn't really made anything iconic. Like the one movie you pointed out earlier was The Great Gatsby, which I think is fine, but overall it's kind of mid for me. Not like I mean the book is good, but I'm just like not a huge fan of that movie.
Hmm. Yeah, the guy who made Elvis had directed The Great Gatsby. I pulled up the director that's going to be doing American Psycho. I looked through it. This is what his notable films are: um, Call Me by Your Name and Challengers, which came out last year with Zendaya. Other than that, I haven't recognized any of the movies, and all the movies I'm seeing here are getting 5 stars or lower. So his big movie is the Call Me by Your Name. That was a summer hit. That was a teenage drama, and then Challengers. But other than that, like if this is the person that we're going off of, I just don't know. I'm worried that the stylistic changes they're going to make in this is just going to make it worse. And again, we're not a fan of this whatsoever. Austin Butler hasn't really been anything that's wowed me, and the director hasn't impressed me either. So yeah, I'm just not very excited about this. I just feel like if any movie to remake, this is just not the one to do.
Yeah, like the best role he's probably been in is like the new Dune movies. Like he's pretty good in those, but he's not like anything where I'm like, wow, I want to see him play American Psycho. Like you agree, like Jake Gyllenhaal would be a much better choice for Patrick Bateman.
Yeah, or maybe like a Bill Skarsgård, somebody who's like a little bit more mysterious. I feel like if you're gonna be a Patrick Bateman, you got to be like this mysterious guy, or you got to
I could
be
see Bill Skarsgård, yeah.
yeah, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I mean it's a financier who's a killer. You know, like it's got to be a little bit of a crazy financier guy. Who would that be? I just don't think Austin Butler fills those shoes very well at all, to be honest.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't think he fills those shoes, but yeah. And for this director, he did Challengers. The people who watched that movie, didn't watch it for tennis, is what I'll say. They watched it for Zendaya because of, if you watch the trailer, you'll know why. I didn't watch the movie, but I know some people who watched it, and it wasn't for tennis.
Yeah, it was just Zendaya being a whore, basically. That's why people watched
Yeah.
it. Not excited about it. Now, maybe we're excited about something else. I mean, from old to new to old, Bill Belichick. He's leaving the NFL. He's returning to coaching to coach University of North Carolina Tar Heels, bringing them back to their former glory, hopefully, on a 5-year deal. 72-year Bill Belichick going to college, first college job. When you heard this, what did you think?
Weird, man, right? Like Bill Belichick and UNC, like honestly, like the colors make sense for like when you think about Bill Belichick there, and maybe an NFL franchise, maybe he doesn't want to commit to like 10 years with the NFL team because he's 72 right now. So by the time he retires, he's probably going to be in his 80s. But this is a team that hasn't won a ACC championship in a very long time. And he's trying to maybe resurrect some life and build a really great program there. And he'll be able to use the transfer portal to his advantage, where it's like, okay, do you want to go play for Grandpa Belichick? Like, what better player to learn from, especially when you have Tom Brady talk about how the coaching in college is currently lacking right now. There's a huge development problem. So if you have someone like Bill Belichick, who's one of the best at developing defenders, I mean, if you're someone who wants to make it to the NFL and you are a corner specifically that wants to make it to the NFL, you should definitely be looking at UNC. So I think Bill Belichick will be able to attract some interest to that franchise. Will they go out there, win a national title year one? No. But if Deion Sanders can have that kind of impact and two very different coaching styles, but just him going to Colorado, the way he used the transfer portal, I definitely think that Bill Belichick should be able to go in there and make a splash. But this is very interesting, especially Belichick dipping his toes into college. And like, I was kind of weirded out by it at first, but like, the more that you think about it, the more it's like, okay, this kind of makes sense, and it kind of feels like the right move for Belichick, where maybe he moves away from the stress of a NFL organization and more into like a grandpa role instead of drill sergeant.
Yeah, I feel like the last year that we've seen Belichick, he's been on Pat McAfee, he's been on Fox, and it feels like he's loosened up a lot more. And for the NFL, maybe he's tired of that grind. Maybe he wants to impact the youth a little bit more. So I don't think it's going to be bad. I'm curious how, I don't know if he'll fulfill the 5-year contract. I feel like eventually he's going to want to retire, but I like the idea of seeing like a grandpa Belichick. If you're any defensive player at all, you mentioned corner. That's kind of probably his best position, at least drafting wise. Um, do you think that at some point he'll still enter, like go back to the NFL after college with new perspectives, or is this probably his last stop?
Oh, it's definitely his last stop. He's 72 years old. Like, he's gonna go back to the NFL as an 80-year-old man? No shot. Like, unless we have this massive breakthrough in medicine. And I mean, hey, we just had that quantum computer chip that solved a problem that would have taken I believe it was like 8, 10 septillion years for our current computers to solve now. So maybe we have a massive breakthrough and we'll have Bill Belichick be able to coach until he's 90 years old. Maybe he'll be the Tom Brady of coaching. If Tom Brady can play till he's 45, god damn it, I can coach till I'm 100 years old and I'll break all of the coaching records for being that old. But like him going back to the NFL, it's like, doesn't really make a lot of sense. I feel like he kind of felt around, put his toes in the water last year, was kind of like, you know what? Now that I've had a full offseason to think about it, now that I've loosened up, I kind of like the college environment maybe a little bit more now, especially being on Pat McAfee, the way that people have kind of gravitated towards him. Like everyone, like just thought of Belichick as this cold hearted a coach from New England. Now, this is like the first time he's had a year off, and he's just been working, doing podcasts, going on ESPN, and now he has some perspective. So it's like, I do think he would stay in college. I just can't see him going back to the NFL.
especially if he's successful at UNC. And maybe they don't win a national title, but they haven't won an ACC title since 1980. So even just bringing them to the title and winning that, that's going to be massive for that program. You saw how bad Colorado was before Deion Sanders. He comes in, and now they're one of the best college football teams. So I think we can have a similar situation with Bill Belichick. Also, like a lot of people I've seen complain about, oh, is he going to be able to do the transfer portal? Is he going to be able to recruit players? All he needs to do is show him the fact that he's won 6 Super Bowls and the fact that he's the greatest head coach of all time in the NFL. And that should be enough for anybody to want to recruit and be with Belichick. So I think he'll be fine
Yeah.
recruiting. I think he'll be fine with transfer portals and all that.
Yeah, I mean, he has 8 rings in total too. So it's like
Hmm.
he was also the GM and the coach at the same time. So he had a lot of jobs. So like people like worried about Belichick, will he be able to handle it? Like, well, he was already the recruiter, already the one going through film, drafting players, negotiating with free agents, and now he was a head coach as well. So it's like the college, like that will still be a lot of work and it is a very hard job, but it's definitely something Bill Belichick will be able to handle. Now, do you think with him going back to college, this has anything to do with his girlfriend? Just breathing new life into him, making him motivated. Maybe he doesn't want to be home all day, something like that, or that she just got him more excited to work with more younger folk, let's say.
I definitely think that she played a part because before that he was married and he lived the marriage life back in New England. But then after you saw him, you see that video of him leaving her house at 4 a.m. with without a
It's
shirt
so
on.
good.
Like that's one of the greatest videos of all time. And it's just Belichick in his 70s, who by the way looked jacked in that video. I think having that 24-year-old girlfriend kind of restored his youth a little bit, maybe softened him up a little bit. So I think that's part of the reason why he's okay to go to college. If this was Belichick in 2015, it would never work. He would never go to college. He had no interest. He was grumpy.
Yeah.
But now he's
Also,
softened up. I think it's going to work.
yeah. Also, he has a husky as his dog. I don't know if you know any people who have had huskies or been around one. They are the definition of a not chill dog. Like he has like kind of like a psycho for a dog, like the famous video of him drafting and his dog's kind of just walking around the room.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to work. I do. I think I've seen a lot of people hate on this hire. I think it's more or less just out of left field. I think we all expected, especially like the Cowboys, maybe the Bills. Like I was more excited to see him return to the NFL because of the opportunity he could have had. Maybe it was the Bears with Caleb Williams. Like I would have liked to see him return to the NFL, but at the same time, like if he goes to college and he fails, he can still go back to the NFL if this completely blows up in his face if he really wants to.
Yeah, and I feel like as long as he has like that mentality shift and he's not the same grumpy coach, I feel like it'll work here. Because like if Jim Harbaugh can leave the NFL and do it and win a championship, like why can't Bill Belichick do it? Like 8 rings? Okay, I'll give you 8 reasons to join my team.
Yeah.
Plus, if North Carolina's bringing in
Yeah.
Bill Belichick, they better be shelling out the cash for some of these players to attract them through the transfer portal because obviously that's the first step to showing like okay yeah we're actually committed to turning this program around.
Yeah, and I have their year, the last couple of years for them. This past year they were 6-6. They've been a fine football program, but they haven't made a bowl game. Or they haven't won a bowl game since looks like since 2019 when they went 7-6. And the last time they've won over 10 games was 2015. But for the most part, their program hasn't really been ultra successful since the late 90s, and they haven't won an ACC title since 1980. It's been a long time. It's time for them to go back to the old glory.
Yeah,
And plus,
we
they've
shall
never won a
see.
national title. Yeah, we'll see. But enough of the college jargon. Enough of Bill Belichick. Enough of terrible Hollywood sequels slash remakes. We have football to talk about. And not just football, the witching hour of the NFL regular season. Week 15 of the NFL. Playoff pictures are starting to look clearer and clearer. Matchups that we're talking about now will ultimately decide whether or not they make their spot in the dance. We start this week off with the NFC matchup of the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers on Thursday night. Right now, Vegas says 49ers have a -3 odds to win this game, over under a 49.5 in Levi Stadium.
Hmm. Yeah, in Levi Stadium, and this is a really tough matchup because the Rams played a really good game last week. However, um, they'd kind of had some off games the past few weeks. Their offense wasn't really clicking, and then suddenly something lit a fuse with that team, and suddenly they realized it's time to turn the temperature all the way up in the room and start putting up points. And then the 49ers only gave up 4 yards to the Chicago Bears last week in the first half. And while it is, you know, a rookie in Caleb Williams, well, it is a offense that doesn't have a head coach right now. Like, that's still pretty impressive what the San Francisco 49ers did. It is tough, though, because you had Christian McCaffrey, he goes down, and then your second string running back goes down, then your third string running back goes down. The injuries just keep piling up here. My only concern, though, for the LA Rams is that you're coming off this massive 44-42 win versus the Buffalo Bills, and then you have to turn right around and play a division rival against Kyle Shanahan, who has kind of owned you. And if this team was able to just make a field goal versus the Rams last time, I feel like they would have won. So I am going to go with the 49ers just because I think the Rams, like, it's so tough to come off that massive of a victory, that high of a high, and then come right around and beat a divisional opponent. It's kind of like the same situation we saw with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You get this massive win versus the Baltimore Ravens, then you have to turn right around, play the Cleveland Browns to a lesser degree on Thursday Night Football. So I think the Niners will be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think in this game, this is really going to decide whether I believe in the Rams to make the playoffs. Because if they win this game and the Commanders lose, then they're at that 7th seed and they're in the playoffs at that point. And they're also breathing down the neck of the Seahawks if the Seahawks were to fall this week as well. For me, I think the 49ers are so beat up and they've had so many injuries and they're so worn down at this point. I mean, we're looking at their fifth string running back at this point. We're picking guys off the street to run. I just think they're too broken at this point to compete at this point. And the Rams, they still have the division right there. And I feel like at this point, the Rams, I know that Kyle Shanahan does have their number historically. Last two games, he's gotten the win. I do think that the Rams can go ahead and win this game. I think this is going to be close. It'll probably be a field goal that decides it. But I'll pick the Rams. I think the Rams will pull this out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get where you're coming from. I'll take the 49ers just because of that massive high the Rams are coming off of. And, with the Niners, every time a Niners player gets injured, a Footlocker puts up a now hiring sign. So
Yeah.
I guess I guess that's where they're finding them. But if San Francisco could just stay healthy, I mean, they would still probably be in a position to win their division this year because it's not just Christian McCaffrey, which is what everyone's focusing on. But like Brandon Ayuk was coming off the best year of his career and got injured. And was that due to him missing training camp and holding out? We'll never know, but it could have been just he wasn't in condition and he really only had one good game this year. And then also, Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa also being injured, and then players like Ufunga on defense. Like this team just has injuries everywhere. But, they've still been able to keep on and win games. And in a divisional rivalry, when you're catching the Rams off a high that was that high, I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to lose to Sean McVay, especially with what McVay did to him after last time they played, where he turned it into a meme where you have him just like patting Kyle Shanahan on the head. Like that has to haunt him in his nightmares every night. Like this is a game they have to win for Kyle Shanahan. And if they don't win this game and they miss the playoffs this year, it's time for Kyle Shanahan to leave. And this should be his Philadelphia moment where Andy Reid got to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, was in the conference championship every single year, but couldn't get it done, then leaves and goes to another team. I feel like that's the arc we're seeing with Kyle Shanahan, and I've always kind of compared their careers because I feel like there is a lot of parallels. Like Andy Reid notoriously was a choker before Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes kind of covered over all those blemishes, and then he also aged into being a clutch head coach, and it can take time to build that clutch gene. So I think if they don't pull it together next year, then we could see Kyle Shanahan potentially look elsewhere.
If I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'd look this year, honestly. Just with the way the Niners, not just their injuries that have fucked them up, but also what their contracts are going to look like. The salary cap, you have what? I think it's 8 different players that are the highest paid at their positions. You got to worry about whether or not you're going to pay Brock Purdy or not, which I wouldn't necessarily do that. So, like, they got a lot of big, tough decisions to make in the future. You've made it to 2 Super Bowls already, lost to the Chiefs both times. I feel like at this point, maybe now the writing's on the wall, especially if they lose this game. If they go to 6-8, they're not going to make the playoffs at this point. If they win it, maybe there's still a chance, but I feel like the writing's on the wall for the Niners that they might have to blow it up, and this might be the last. This might be ultimately their season if they lose this game.
Yeah, where would you see him going though? Like that's a question where it's like I can't really envision him somewhere right now.
Maybe Chicago. Um, I would say Chicago because there's a rookie quarterback that they don't have to pay for 4 years. The defense is already built. They just need a good grown up head coach that is of high regard. So maybe the Bears.
The Raiders, if they move on from Antonio Pierce, Tom Brady has a conversation behind closed doors.
That could work. I think they're pretty much going to get Shador Sanders. It's kind of a lock at this point. Raiders would be fun. Maybe the Bills move on from Sean McDermott if they have a failed playoff run. Bring him to Buffalo. I don't know, but I think
Oh
the
my
writing's on the
god.
wall. Pair
Yeah,
him with a
Kyle Shanahan and Josh Allen versus Andy Reid and Mahomes. That could work. Maybe
that'd be iconic.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati would also be great. If I'm him, I wouldn't leave unless if I have a top 5 quarterback or at least a rookie quarterback that I can develop into something great. Otherwise, you might as
Yeah.
well stay.
Yeah, that would be the point because Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan have made their best with the Jimmy G's and the Donovan McNabbs and the Brock Purdy's of the world. It's like no disrespect to them; they're great players, but you know, are they Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, even someone like Jordan Love? They're not even to the same level as Jared Goff. So it's like this is a situation where Kyle Shanahan should leave if he has the potential to coach one of the top quarterbacks in the league or develop his own rookie.
Yeah, because at that point, that's his legacy on the line, and I think it's kind of a no-brainer for him. So we'll see how it goes. Thursday night, huge matchup for both of them. We'll see how it pans out. Kind of a coin toss, I think, of who wins this game, but I'm leading Rams, you're leading Niners. We'll see how it plays out. And then we go to the 1 o'clock slates on Sunday. We have Kadarius. We were gonna have a Kadarius Tony reunion against Kansas City. Kansas City going to Cleveland, favored at 4.5. But even the Browns said no. Kadarius Tony should not be on an NFL roster. Time to pack your bags. You're going to Canada. We don't want you. So no Kadarius Tony reunion for them, unfortunately. But Cleveland and Kansas City. I've been kind of upset with how the Kansas City Chiefs have won these last couple of weeks, or really this entire season. Is this a game where you see them potentially maybe falling asleep at the wheel? The Browns potentially upset them with a Jameis Winston masterclass, or the typical Chiefs win?
Typical Chiefs win. I mean, we'll see probably a Jameis Winston masterclass in this game, but what does that really mean? We'll probably see 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in this game, is kind of what I'm feeling for Jameis Winston. And I think, the Chiefs kind of always play to their competition. And I feel like in this game, it's like last game they went up 13-0, then kind of just coasted and made a play when they needed to. And they're kind of just playing with people in the league. They want people to think that they're kind of down. They want people to think they're not a juggernaut. But the fact is, the Chiefs have only lost one game. They're the only team to do it in the NFL. Like, oh, if it's so easy, then why do they have the best record in the league at this point? And it's not like they played terrible competition and they've just won in close games. It's like, okay, this is something that the Chiefs did last year, and they lost 6 games last year and they've only lost 1, so it's like people wanna act like this is a much worse team than it was last year, but, like, really the only difference is Travis Kelce is a little bit slower, but I do like that you have DeAndre Hopkins on this team. You will miss Rashee Rice, but I think going up against Cleveland, this is definitely a game that Kansas City will be able to lock up because they know that they need the 1 seed. They know that they need time for Travis Kelce to rest. They know that they need time for DeAndre Hopkins to rest, who's an older player. And then also you have Pacheco, who's coming off an injury. Kareem Hunt is older at this point in his career. And then Andy Reid coming off a bye is pretty much unstoppable. So like it feels like the Chiefs do realized that they need to get the 1 seed this year. They went on the road last year, and it's kinda just felt like they want to prove that they could go on the road just to do it, but they understand the assignment. They understand that they do need that bye and need the rest.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that they're due for a loss in these next couple of weeks because they'll be playing 3 games in 11 games, or three games in 11 days. So I think when they face the Steelers on Christmas, we're gonna have maybe the most tired Chiefs team we've seen. But otherwise, like I don't see them losing to the Browns. I think that's pretty safe to say. Just with how bad the Browns have been, even with Jameis Winston, I think the Chiefs will be fine. And then Joe Burrow goes to Tennessee to face potentially Will Levis if he's ends up playing. I know he's banged up at this point. Will we see him? Will we see Mason Rudolph? Can the Bengals potentially go on their last hurrah, their last run potentially? Right now, Vegas says the Bengals are favored at 5 points on the road, over under a 46.5.
Yeah, take the over on 46.5 because the Bengals are gonna get 38 of that in this game. I mean, 5 points as a spread is a little bit ridiculous. You just beat the Cowboys by a touchdown this game, and did we not just watch the Tennessee Titans go out there versus the Jacksonville Jaguars and score 6 points, yet you're only giving them a 5-point spread versus what has been the number 1 passing attack in the league this year. You have the number 1 quarterback in the league this year in Joe Burrow, at least statistically, and then you have the number 1 wide receiver in the league this year, and it's Jamar Chase. He's coming off a game where he had 14 receptions, 2 touchdowns, an absolutely electric performance, and now you only have a 5-point spread versus the Tennessee Titans. Like, I don't know what Vegas is doing here, but this seems a little too easy to pick up a 5-point spread when you have the Bengals, kind of having to win every single game here, and the Titans who would benefit from losing a little bit here because I don't think they think Will Levis is the answer anymore. And I feel like Brian Callahan is going to want to handpick his own quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. This game feels weird that the spread's that low, but hey, you know what? If Bart Simpson and Lisa can connect on some of these Simpson broadcast plays, then I believe in them. I think yeah, I would take the over. I would take the Bengals to cover the spread, and I feel like it might be a little bit of a too little, too late for the Bengals. I feel like they're probably going to win out at this point, but still probably miss out on the playoffs. But I'm not going to bet against Joe Burrow with how great he's played. I'm not going to bet against Jamar Chase or Chase Brown. So yeah, man, feels too obvious, but yeah, Bengals beat the Tennessee Titans. And then let's talk about another huge spread. We're talking about three of the top three quarterbacks in the league. Baltimore, they go to New York. We're not even going to get Drew Lock, thank God. Obviously, Daniel Jones is out the door. Tommy DeVito returns. And easily the biggest spread of the week. Baltimore is favored at 16, over under of 42.5.
Is that the biggest spread of the year?
Arguably, it's the biggest spread I've seen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the biggest spread of the season. And then we're expecting a scenario where, you have Lamar Jackson in here. Baker Mayfield, last time we saw Tommy DeVito was taunting him, doing that Italian dance. Like, you're not the only person who gets to make Italian references just because your last name is DeVito. Now we have a 16-point spread. I'm sorry, Danny DeVito. No horse head in the Baltimore Ravens locker room is going to save you this time, because now the Ravens are coming off of a bye, kind of on a skid here a little bit, and need to get back in a rhythm. This is the perfect warm up game for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to start to click and head back into the playoffs. See if we can reconnect with Rashad Bateman, reconnect with Zay Flowers in this game. So I don't know. Can you live up to a 16-point spread? I think so. Would I put money on it? 50-50. We'll have to see how I'm feeling that day. But I do think the Ravens can go out there and drop at least 33 points on this Giants team.
Yeah, just like who's going to stop Derrick Henry and who's going to stop Lamar Jackson, especially Lamar. If I'm Lamar, I'm taking offense to the fact that Josh Allen is now the favorite to win MVP. When every single statistical category I have better stats than Josh Allen in. Again, I'm not a Josh Allen hater, but this is ridiculous at this point. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I take it personally and I have a huge game. Really, the only people that can stop them on that defense is going to be the Brian Burns of the world or the Bobby Okerikis. But that's just not going to be enough at this point. The Giants, they benefit from losing just like the Titans against the Bengals. So I'm going to take the Ravens to cover and blow out the Giants.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully we don't see another 14-11 game, but this game quite isn't as bad as the Saints and Giants, so I'm not going to predict that there is going to be a nuclear bomb dropped on the stadium this time, even though if it hit East Rutherford, New Jersey, maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, New York. I'm sure New York fans at this point would probably prefer that. But if we're talking about you talk about the Giants and Saints game, why not talk about the Guantanamo Bay Saints? They go and they hoist Jaden Daniels in the Commanders. When we last saw the Commanders, they beat up on the Tennessee Titans after the Cliff Kingsbury experiment looked like it was failing. Um, but they went out and beat up on the Titans. Now they have a pretty tough slate to end the season. But now they go to the Saints with Mr. Derek Carr, who might not be playing in this game. We might see a Spencer Rattler or Taysom Hill in this game. The Commanders are favored at 7.5, over under a 43.5.
Over under 43 and a half. I think it'll be the under, because I can't see the Saints scoring above 13 points. And I think the Commanders do dominate this game, but it's going to be more like 30-31 to 6 in this game. I really don't see the Saints scoring that many points. Maybe if Taysom Hill is that quarterback, you get a little bit of a revenge game from him where he's like, hey, maybe I should have been the quarterback all along here. But I do think the Commanders realize this is a game where was our really last fine tuning game where we get an easy opponent who would benefit from losing. And now we need to go out there and absolutely end their season, destroy any confidence that they had going into the offseason, go out there and win this game. So, with the Washington Commanders, this is really your last chance to kind of fine tune heading into the playoffs. So, I do think you can go out there, cover that 7.5 point spread. So, give me the Commanders to cover the spread and beat the Saints in this game. Hopefully, just send them out of New Orleans.
Yeah, one can hope. Weirdly enough, I'm actually going to pick the Saints to cover. I don't know why. Something's in the air in this game. I just feel like we're due for a bad football game. And for some reason, I feel like this game is going to be really close for no reason. I'm seeing like a 21 to 18 type of game because Jaden Daniels, even though, I mean, if you take out that Titans game, he has been struggling the second half of the season. I still don't believe that the Cliff Kingsbury um, stench of the second half is fixed at this point just because they beat up on the Titans and their win before that was the Giants. I still feel like they've been beating up on bad competition. And I think the Saints are good enough to cover the spread, maybe not win this game, but I still think that the Commanders are going to struggle. And the Saints, their offense is just the Guantanamo Bay Saints at this point. So I just feel like it's going to be an ugly, bad, painful game to watch that for some reason Red Zone makes us watch every snap of.
Oh yeah, no, Scott Hansen's gonna love falling asleep at the wheel this one. Well, if it was 4 o'clock, it'd be like most of the slate, but hopefully since it's 1 o'clock, we're not gonna have as many cuts to this one here. But I still think the Commanders can cover. Hopefully they can snap out of the funk a little bit here, and build some momentum and get a playoff run going.
Yeah, we shall see. We have other games that'll probably be more fun to watch, like Miami versus Houston. Houston coming off of their bye. Even on their break, the AFC South has continued to look pathetic, and they are favored at 3 points at home. But bad news for the Texans, they're in a warm state. So the Dolphins might actually get off the bus for this game and might actually put up a fight. And with how the Texans have played compared to the Dolphins in warm weather, I'm actually kind of nervous for the Texans. Maybe the Dolphins actually pull this game out and take the win. Tua's actually been playing pretty well in warm weather. So I feel like this might be the last time they're in warm weather. I think Dolphins win this game simply because they don't need any sort of hand warmers and no jackets and no blankies necessary. I think they can actually win this game.
Yeah, they can win this game also because you have the Texans who have been struggling, and the Texans simply really don't need to do anything else. They could probably lose out and still win the AFC South here with how pathetic the Titans and Jaguars are. They're out of it. And then you look at the Colts. The Colts have been a joke this year. The Colts are going through an identity crisis right now. They don't know if they want to play a veteran quarterback. They don't know if Anthony Richardson is the guy or not, or if he just needs to play more and develop. And with the Houston Texans, it seems like they only win a game when they just need to move up a spot in their division, but you're not going to be the 3 seed or above here. You're pretty much locked into that 4 seed or going to miss the playoffs, where the Miami Dolphins are playing for a playoff spot right now. They're coming off a big divisional win in overtime, and I think the Dolphins have been building momentum, and people have underestimated Tyreek Hill, but they're on a mission. They're trying to make the playoffs right now. So I'm going to take Miami in this game, and I think they'll be able to beat Houston. And I think Miami wins it roughly like 31-23. I feel like is a good score for this game, especially being in warm weather. You have this game, and then you go to San Francisco, and then it's pretty much a wrap on the warm weather for the Miami Dolphins. So you have to take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the game they win. You and I both agree. Let's get out of the AFC South, although we do have to talk about one more
Oh,
AFC South game. Try not to go bulimic on me when I talk about this game. How about Mac Jones hoisting fossilized Aaron Rodgers in Trevor Banks Stadium? Spread is 40. Well, the spread is the Jets at 3.5, over under of 40.5. If you were lucky enough to don the last Jacksonville Jaguars game, it was one of the worst games of the year. 10-6, absolutely terrible. Mac Jones, 12 of 18, 100 yards roughly. And then the Jets, no matter how big of a lead, the Jets could literally have a 70-point lead, and I just know they're going to lose. The Jets can't keep a lead, and the Jags can't win a game. So the battle of the pathetic, the battle of the worst top five according to the Brickyard. Take it away.
I would take it away, talk about how the Jets have been disappointing this year, how the Jaguars are also a massive disappointment. But during this game, I have a very important appointment with some silent films that I need to watch here. So I will not be participating in this one. And I feel like next question, please, is the appropriate answer when it comes to this game.
Yeah, you know what?
Can
Now
we
that I think
cancel
about it,
this?
yeah, I think actually you're right. Thinking about it, I actually do have an appointment. I'm going to be watching the TV static for 4 hours and on full volume. Um, doing literally anything else. I'll be doing some cockball torture, something that's better than whatever this game is going to be. This game might actually give me cataracts. I might actually lose my vision watching how terrible these two teams are. the Jets, who are the most disappointing team in football this year, and the Jags, who are easily probably the most pathetic in every way possible. This team makes me nauseous. If I don't eat the entire day, it's because I watched this game. If you see me come back on the show next week and I'm 40 pounds, you know why. It's because I watched this game and I lost my appetite. Next
God,
game.
this is the game that they showed them in the Holocaust over and over and over again. It's like they
Actually,
used this during the Russian sleep experiments. You just have to stay awake and watch the Jaguars and the Jets. I mean, some poor man in the Middle East is about to get tortured. The US is like, all right, you're going to have to watch this game for 10 hours straight. Good luck.
ugh, god awful. Let's talk about anything else besides this game. Good lord. How about the last of the 1 o'clock slates? This game I actually think is actually going to be a pretty good game. Dallas goes to Carolina. Carolina has their favorite at 3. They're at home. Over under of 43.5. Each week I feel like we talk about a game that's going to be a good bad like two bad teams but a good game. I actually think this game is going to be fun to watch. You have Cooper Rush, who played pretty well against the Bengals, and then Bryce Young, who has been playing well the last 5 weeks. I don't really care who wins this game necessarily, although I do think the Panthers are going to win this one. But two bad teams, but I think we're going to be in for a good game. This is actually going to be pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I think we're actually in for a good game, and Panthers are starting to be our sleeper team to potentially turn it around and maybe make a playoff push in the next year or two here. So I like the direction that Dave Canales is pushing them in, and there's a lot of frustration with the Dallas Cowboys coming off a tough Monday night loss here, and with the Carolina Panthers, who are right there with the Philadelphia Eagles. And while the Eagles have their flaws, they have been a really solid 10-2 team here, even though Jalen Hurts hasn't had a passing game of over 250 yards since week 4. I think the Carolina Panthers and the Cowboys compete hard in this game. I think it'll be a close one-score game, and I'm going to take the Panthers to win this one. And I think it's going to be right around. I'll go with the weird score here, maybe a little bit of a scoregami. Let's go 19-17 in this one. I think the Panthers come out there and get it done.
Yeah, I agree. Panthers win. I do think they'll cover, so I'm going to say I'll have a weird score too. I'll say 22-18. They win. Something weird. But let's go over the 4 o'clock slate, which, by the way, the most 4 o'clock slate games I've seen all season. We have 5 games to watch, and
Whoa,
and two
5?
and 2.5 of them look pretty good. So we're in for a good week, I think.
2.5?
2.5 look great. Let's talk about the
What's
best
the
one
half?
first. You'll see. You'll see.
Okay.
Let's talk about the best one first, which is going to be Buffalo and Detroit. Detroit is favored at 2.5, over under 53.5. We have what some may say is the MVP favorite against arguably the Super Bowl favorite in this game. No matter how many people they fall and lose on defense, Detroit's defense is still standing tall. Their offense has been fantastic. The Bills just lost to the Rams. This is a hard game to pick, but I just feel like in this game, I'm not betting against Detroit ever again, as far as I'm concerned. I'm wearing the Amon Ra sweatshirt, and for me, it's like no matter what happens, no matter who they lose, they just keep playing strong. Dan Campbell, they believe in. This just feels like a team of destiny. So I'm not going to sit here and bet against anybody but Detroit. I think Detroit is going to win this game.
Yeah. Do you think this will be a close game?
Mhm.
I guess is my only question.
Yeah, I think it'll be close. I
All
mean,
right.
yeah,
Like,
be
if
close.
it's gonna be a close game, then Sean McDermott can't make in-game decisions. He's like, "Oh, we need to get the ball back here, and we have 3 timeouts. Let me run the ball and burn a timeout here, so we have to do an onside kick." Like, this is the guy we're dealing with here. We're on the other side. We have Dan Campbell, whose players believe in him. He goes for the smart gutsy call here where he's wheelbarrowing his nuts around the field. And we've had Jared Goff kind of just quietly leading this team over the past few years, and the Lions are finally at the peak of their powers. They're finally the favorite in the NFC, at least they should be in most media circles. And now you have Detroit taking on Buffalo, and this is a game where Jared Goff can really flip a narrative because they played each other a few years ago on Thanksgiving when the Lions were kind of coming up. I believe it was when they started 0-7, and they had a close game versus the Buffalo Bills. And they almost had Buffalo in that game. And I think this time around, they're gonna go out there, make it right, and beat them because Buffalo, I mean, if you lose 2 games in a row, now we're looking at a situation where the Steelers overtake them for the 2 seed, and then Josh Allen is being put in everyone's MVP conversation. And I feel like Josh Allen, the way you measure his stock is literally like when everyone starts talking about a stock, when everyone starts talking about crypto, you know what that is? The number one indicator to sell. And I feel like that's been the same exact storyline with the Buffalo Bills. When everyone's talking about them, everyone starts to hype them up, then they start to crumble, then they start to teeter and fall off here a little bit. And he's had 2 historic back-to-back games. I mean, the guy just had 6 total touchdowns and lost, and now he's going to go up against the best offense in the league. It's like, okay, Cooper Cup and Puka Nakua did that to you, and now you have the best running duo in the league, Amon St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Tim Patrick showing up out of nowhere and has been balling out for the Detroit. Who would have thought Tim Patrick? I mean, I didn't realize he was that big. I saw him a little bit on the Broncos, but they finally have like a solid, big, physical receiver. You have your all around best, most underrated wide receiver in the league in Amon St. Brown. You have Sam Laporta. You have Brock right there still. I mean, this Lions team has something to prove, and people are still going to write them off. And then I feel like everyone pregame is going to pick the Buffalo Bills, and we're going to get another announcer curse here. But like, this could be a game where if Jared Goff balls out, has 5 touchdowns in this game, maybe we finally see him in the MVP conversation because I feel like he's deserved to be there. And if you take out that Houston game, it's like people give him shit for throwing 5 interceptions. It's like, well, yeah, he threw 5 interceptions, kept throwing it, and led his team back to victory. Like, what else do you want from him?
Plus, outside of that one game, the last ever since that 5 interception game, he's 9 touchdowns, 1 pick, QBR 110. And before that, he had 16 touchdowns to 4 picks. So it's not like he's this horrible quarterback. He's been elite all season. Even that game that he threw 5 picks, they still won and came back and beat the Texans. So I agree with everything you say there. I do think that Buffalo has been that team historically. And ultimately for the Bills, like even if they lose this game, they have the Patriots twice to end the season plus the Jets. So even if they lose, they're probably going to be 13-4 and maybe they're the second seed, maybe they're the third. But the Bills are pretty much in the playoffs. They're pretty much locked into that 2 or 3 seed. And Detroit, at the end of the day, they have the Packers and the Vikings on their neck still. So they really can't, even if they are the best team, they really can't afford to lose. They're still hungry and they want to be the number one overall seed and win the Super Bowl. So yeah, I like Detroit in this game. So do you. And I do think that it'll be good. It'll be a great game.
And then also, don't forget, they played back to back Thursday night games. So they've had some extra rest here to prepare for this game. They've had a mini bye. They've been studying Buffalo. Dan Campbell's been in the lab. Aaron Glenn has been in the lab. And Jared Goff has been there studying tape on the Bills. So you see them coming off like Josh Allen's supposed to have 6 touchdowns again, because that's what it's going to take to beat Detroit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I mean, this will ultimately be an MVP conversation too. If Josh Allen has a bad game, I don't want to hear him as an MVP, especially with Lamar Jackson having better numbers than him. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. Speaking of MVP candidates, the Battle of Pennsylvania: Saquon Barkley versus Russell Wilson. The Eagles are favored at 5.5, over under of 41.5. The Battle of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh going to Philadelphia. I feel like we're both are going to feel pretty similar about this game. I just feel like the Steelers are the better team. They're the one that doesn't have drama in the locker room. Really, the only thing about this game that would worry me is that George Pickens will probably be out of this game. That could be a big potential loss for them. But overall, I just feel like the Steelers are better equipped. I feel like they're the better team, better coach, better quarterback playing at this point. Really, the only thing that the Eagles have over them is Saquon Barkley, and they have a perfect defense that can contain him. I like the Steelers to win this game. I'm going to go. I'm going to say 24-17.
Yeah, 24-17 is definitely a good score. And the Philadelphia Eagles have kind of been grinding out wins here, and you just got into a dogfight with the Carolina Panthers, and you're suddenly gonna turn around and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers off of the drama where AJ Brown is talking about how the issue with this team is passing. Like, I just don't like where this Philadelphia Eagles team is at, where I feel like the Steelers have been getting better each week and they've been building and they've kind of just have created this tailwind that's been pushing them forward and they've been building momentum all season long, whether it was looking surprisingly good with Jalen Hurts. People finally starting to maybe like the Steelers team is gonna win another game. And people kept having that hot take. I said, you're tempted to do it. And I know what you're thinking, but no, the good hot take no, like is not to pick Mike Tomlin to have a losing season. Like that's just a dumb hot take at this point. I don't respect it. Everyone says it every year. Like this is gonna be the first season where he has a losing season. And it's like, okay, it's literally like the Max Kellerman, Tom Brady is falling off a cliff because Brady could still be playing today, or it's like every quarterback has a cliff, every coach has a losing season. Like, yeah, at some point you'll be right. Is it going to be this year? No, because they already have a winning season. And is he going to suddenly fall off a cliff in the next few years? Probably not. So it's like with the Steelers this year, I feel like they're a more cohesive unit. Without George Pickens in this game, I feel like they still can get by. And defensively, they're going to be able to contain Philadelphia. And TJ Watt will be able to make enough plays. And I can just see it right now. Philadelphia Eagles driving to take the lead, kick a field goal to beat the Steelers, and then TJ Watt strip sack on Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts has fumble issues in the pocket.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like the defense is well equipped to stop the Eagles' offense. And the other side of the ball, Eagles defense has played well, but I feel like the Steelers are more there's more layers to that offense, I feel like, than people give them credit for. You've seen Jalen Warren and Najee really step it up. And their offense, like the receivers outside of George Pickens, maybe they're not someone you write home about, but like they have Mike Williams, who's been fine for them. They have Calvin Austin, who's been underrated for them too. I think they're fine. I think they're good enough even without George Pickens. George Pickens will be missed, don't get me wrong, but I think they'll cover and beat the Eagles.
Yeah, and they've unlocked Fryermuth a little bit this year. He's having one of the best years of his career under Arthur Smith. So was Arthur Smith the problem or was it Kyle Pitts? Maybe Kyle
Mm,
Pitts is still a colossal bust because he was taken before Jamar Chase.
yeah. No, yeah, no. Don't even get me started about Kyle Pitts. Another good game for the 4 o'clock slates. We have Tampa going to LA to face the Chargers. Chargers are favored at 3 points, over under a 45.5 in this game.
Hmm. The Chargers are favored in this game in
They're at
Tampa.
home. They're at
They're
home.
at
Well,
home.
they're at home, favored at 3.
Home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a little bit of a road trip going on right now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were just in Vegas. Now you turn around and play the Chargers. I I just don't like this matchup for Tampa Bay. Just with Baker Mayfield, he's making some unforced errors that he really doesn't need to make. Like he's playing the Raiders and he's getting sacked. He has five people literally falling on top of him, and he's like, "I'm gonna close my eyes," and then huck the ball into four defenders. Like, what are we doing? And we still have some plays here where you question Baker Mayfield a little bit, and I think the Chargers defense is really going to be able to carry them in this game, and their offense can do enough, especially versus Tampa Bay to get by. So I will take the Chargers in this game, even though it feels like every time I pick them, they lose. But with Baker Mayfield, we've just seen some unforced turnovers. They're finally in the lead for their division right now, so you can take your foot off the gas a little bit with just how terrible Atlanta looks. Like, if you're Tampa Bay, are you really expecting Atlanta to go on some historic run when Kirk Cousins has 9 interceptions and 0 touchdowns in the past 3 games? No, probably not. So I think this is a game that the Chargers have a little bit more to play for because they're trying to secure a wild card spot.
Yeah, it's tough. I think for the Bucks, if they lose this game, the Falcons face the Raiders this week on Monday night, which we'll go over in a few minutes, but it's it's a situation where it's hard for me to grasp this game because the Chargers, like, they haven't played bad football, but that I just feel like their offense has been limited. Like they scored 17 points these last two games. Their offense has been some extent sputtering a little bit. I feel like they really are missing like they really missed Lad McConkey this past week. I want to see if he comes back this week. I'm not sure if he will or not. I know he's banged up. He's limited at practice, so maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. But they really missed Lad McConkey last week. He got banged up in the Atlanta game too. Um, but I think that this is just going to be one of those tough, gritty games that ultimately comes down to a field goal and who has the ball last. I'm actually going to lean the Bucks to win this game simply because a win here basically puts them at the division winner, especially if Atlanta somehow loses this Raiders game. And the Chargers, not to say that they can't afford a loss. Nobody wants to lose, but with how their offenses looked, it's been kind of sputtering a little bit. And with Tampa, I do think that they can bounce back from that game. So I'll pick Tampa to win, but I do think it's going to be super close.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it, and I think it will be a close game. I just envision the Chargers defense really carrying them in this game and then putting them in some positions to score. And I can definitely see a pick six in this game from Baker.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a good game, but honestly, I'm kind of split on who wins this game and who doesn't. This would be a perfect game for Justin Herbert to have a big game and step up and win this for the Chargers. But let's talk about the less stellar games of this 4 o'clock slate. Let's talk about the Patriots going to Arizona to place the Cardinals at State Farm Stadium. Cardinals are favored at 6 points, over under of 45 and a half.
Is this the half game?
No, no, the half game is
No.
actually the Bucks and Chargers game. Which, looking back, I was wrong about that. That's a full game. We'll call it 3 games. Um, yeah. What do I say about this game? Um, the Cardinals have been terrible the last month. Just about the Patriots. Are they one of those teams that are benefiting from losing? We don't know. All I know is that the Chargers have lost 3 straight games after winning 4 straight games, after losing a game, after winning a game, after losing 2 straight, after winning 2 straight to start their season. So really, it's kind of a coin toss. Are they going to lose 4 straight games after winning 4 straight games, or are they going to win and make some noise? I feel like it's going to be hard for me to bet the Patriots to win this game, but I am anyways. I think the Patriots, they've had close games recently. Like they had that close game against the Rams. The Colts game was close. Like I feel like they're one of those teams, kind of like how we talked about the Panthers, although to a lesser degree. I feel like they haven't played as bad as their record shows. So I do think the Patriots are actually going to upset the Cardinals here and maybe actually possibly beat them. Especially because it's going to be a home game. A lot of Patriots fans are tired of the snow. They're going to come out here and have an audience there. Probably going to be 60-40 Patriots fans. I'm actually picking the Patriots to win. I think we're going to see a decent game from Drake May. And I feel like the Cardinals offense, the way how much it's been sputtering, why not? Patriots upset.
Yeah, we could see a Patriots upset in that game. I will go the opposite because I don't know. I just don't believe in your Cardinals picks anymore when you have a feeling about them. And I feel like you're kind of the Kramer when it comes to picking Cardinals games at this point. So I'm going to go inverse Jameson Cardinals parlay on this game and take them to win versus the New England Patriots. I don't know if it is the fluoride in the water that is talking to me or the chlorine or what's in the air here, but I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Don't question my logic. My logic is sound and I feel like it makes a lot of sense. I thought about it. I'm like, okay, I can definitely see the Cardinals beating the Patriots for that exact very reason.
Hey, you know what? The reason I picked the Bucks mainly is because you picked the Chargers, and you are the Chargers Kramer. So both of us have a Kramer s quality in one of these teams. I just Cardinals. I fucking hate this Cardinals team. I really do because they're frustrating. They're not a bad team, but they play. You just never know what Cardinals team you're going to get on any given week. Either they get blown out by the Seahawks, or they play a great game against Buffalo. They torch the Ram. Like, what team are we going to get? We don't know. It's a coin toss what Cardinals team we get, and I feel like the last few weeks it's been the bad part of the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's been the bad one, and we're probably going to continue to get it, but who knows? Hopefully, we get a good version of this Cardinals team, but we shall see, especially versus the New England Patriots. But we
If
will
I'm right
go.
about the Patriots, though, I don't ever want to be called Cardinals Kramer again. Nobody wants to be Kramer in any circumstance whatsoever. Kramer's an
I don't know
idiot.
how, like, every time I go into the break room at work, like, that guy is yapping on MSNBC Finance. I'm like, how does this guy still have a job who's wrong about so much? Like, the inverse Kramer ETF is literally outperforming the Pelosi tracker. It's absolutely stellar stuff. Like, every time this guy talks about, like, something you hold, something I own, you're like, stop it right now. Anytime Kramer is talking about anything, but it's like, is he just like paid opposition to kind of misdirect the market? Because how are you this wrong so many times as someone like Jim Cramer, where you can outperform someone who's actively insider trading with their political power? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, honestly, if you want to make the most money, just follow everything he says to not do, and you'll do great. He said not to buy Bitcoin a couple of years ago, and they went on that absolutely insane tear where it went from 8,000 to 64,000. He said buy. There's a couple of stocks he's told you to buy. He said to buy Terra Luna before it collapsed. So he's an idiot. Like
AMD.
Kramer's an idiot. He's an idiot in every regard, and he's bald. So fuck him. Hashtag no hair. Poor guy. Um, last of the 4 o'clock slate.
Hashtag no hair.
The last of the 4 o'clock slate. We get the honor of seeing um, the Broncos hoist Black Tim Tebow in the Indianapolis Colts, and they are favored at 4. Bo Nix versus Black Tim Tebow. Boy, will this be a game that's played.
Yeah, this will be an incredible game. A lot of great plays will go on in this game, but I feel like, in all honestly, this is going to be a game that the Broncos go out there and win. Anthony Richardson is going to have his typical stat line where he goes 10 for 28, has an interception, a fumble, and a rushing touchdown, and he has, 10 rushing attempts for 41 yards, and it looks like the hardest yards that any quarterback has ever picked up, because he's going to have one rush for 41 yards and then 9 rushes for no gain in this game.
Yep.
And that's kind of just how the season has gone for Anthony Richardson. So the Broncos have earned some respect here. Looks like they're going to be a legitimate team that makes the playoffs. But if the Broncos lose this game, it's like, okay, maybe the Bengals can sneak into the playoffs and make it. Maybe Miami does have a shot at making the playoffs if the Denver Broncos drop this game. Because if you're going to lose to the Indianapolis Colts, you play the Kansas City Chiefs again. I think you may play the Chargers again if you're the Broncos. Like, okay,
Mhm.
you could potentially drop 3 of the next 4 games.
You might already do that because after the Colts, they face the Chargers, Bengals, and Chiefs to end it. So those were potentially 3 straight losses to end the season. Um,
So if
I
the
mean, they
Bengals win out and beat the Broncos and they lose out,
yeah. If the well, the Broncos are 8-5. So I think that if even if they beat the Colts, if they lose their last 3 and the Bengals beat them, then I think the Bengals will then have the head to head record against them and still make it into the playoffs potentially.
oh, I hope that happens. The NFL needs to make that happen. We don't need to see the Broncos in the playoffs. We need Joe Burrow.
Yeah. And then like the only other team that could catch them would be the Dolphins, but for the Dolphins, like they face the Texans, the Niners, the Browns, and Jets, and I feel like they can lose 2 of those games most likely.
Yeah, I'd say one. I only
Yeah,
think they're going to lose one of those. But honestly, I think the Dolphins could easily win all 4 of those.
they could. They would make it in that case, but they currently have well, they have a better record than the Bengals, so I guess it doesn't matter. So we'll see how the tiebreakers work in that case. But Broncos win. Colts suck. Tim Tebow 2.0. It's over. Sorry, Colts. I don't care about you at all. Sunday night football. This game, Packers at Seahawks. Seahawks could potentially just not necessarily clinch the division, but be in a really good position to clinch that division. Packers are favored at 3 on the road. Geno Smith versus uh, Jordan Love. We had a great Thursday night game last week with the Packers that almost prevailed for them, but I think in this game I'm pretty confident picking the Packers in this game. No disrespect to the Seahawks necessarily, but just feel like with how hungry they are, with how good that roster is, and after coming up short against the Lions, I feel like they're just going to be hungry to bounce back, especially with Matt LaFleur. I would take Matt LaFleur over Mike McDonald. I'd take pretty much every person on their roster outside of maybe their receivers over the Seahawks, maybe the Seahawks defense over them, but I like the Packers. I think it's going to be close. It usually is. I'm going to go 27-24.
27-24. Yeah, that's a definitely a good score. And this is fantastic that we get Seattle and Green Bay on Sunday Night Football. This is one of those games as a football fan that should just make you excited because it has playoff implications for both teams here. The Packers are in a good position where they could definitely easily win a uh, playoff game here, and they're probably going to make the playoffs. Where Seattle, you have some tough games down the road here where you play the Rams, still have the Vikings, and this is a game you need to win. And I'm not really comfortable just picking the Packers in this game, even though I think they will win because Jordan Love does give the defense opportunities to pick him off and intercept the football. So I do think Seattle will be able to turn him over. And I do think 27-24 is a good score, but I feel like this turns into a little bit of a shootout here. And we see a game where the Packers are playing like a team that is rested, coming off a mini bye. Matt LaFleur has had time to prepare for the Seattle defense. And then the Seattle Seahawks are going to come out like a team that needs to win their division here. But I still think that Jordan Love at the end of the day is going to be that quarterback that goes out and gets you the clutch drive in this game. He's going to put his team in a position to win if he has the ball in his hands to end the game, especially with what they did battling with Detroit. So just having that extra rest in this game and time to prepare, I feel like is going to be the difference maker to Green Bay. So I think I'm going to take them 31-27 over the Seattle Seahawks in this game.
I like that score. Yeah, we both agree that the Packers win. Close game. I think this is going to be a really good Sunday night game, maybe one of the best of the year. And I guess we'll see who prevails. But Monday night, you know how we do? You know how they do that thing at the beginning of the season where they have two games and everyone's like, "Why is there two Monday night games?" Well, lucky for us, they do it again in Week 15,
There's
and
two?
there's two Monday night games. Yep, for some reason,
Good
and
God.
one of them's terrible. One of the other one, should be fun at least. But let's talk about the bad one first. We have the 0-4 of the last four games, zero touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Hall of Famer Kirk Cousins taking on the Raiders, who are actively tanking. This is a game that if you have cable, if you're one of the four people who still have cable, this will be on ESPN. Lucky you. Falcons are favored at only -4 in my mind. That's hilarious. Over under a 44.5. This game doesn't like. Do we even need to cover this game? Is anyone going to watch
44
this
and a
game?
half?
44.5, and that actually seems
Ridiculous.
pretty. That seems pretty legit, actually. I feel like 17-13 is the game we're going to see.
How about a over under of 20?
Yeah,
Like, what are we
10 to
doing in this
6.
game? Like, I feel like this is going to be a game that the Falcons are just going to go out there and lose. Like, they're on a poor man's version of what Philadelphia did last season, where this wasn't a team that made it to a Super Bowl, but they won some good close games here, had some good comebacks, and then Kirk Cousins just looks like a shell of himself. But no, what we're going to get is, Kirk Cousins, how he got Daniel Jones paid with the New York Giants and losing that game versus the Giants, and Brian Daboll was suddenly the next Bill Belichick. Hilarious how that take aged from the Giants fans when they're like, "Oh, Brian Daboll is going to be the next Belichick." Well, you need to hold down a job before you can be considered Belichick. How about you win more than one playoff game? And I think he's going to go out there versus the Raiders, and you know what? I think Shador would be better in Jacksonville. So let me go ahead and lose to the Raiders and then screw them out of the number one pick in this game because Desmond Ritter is playing for a job next year.
Oh God, Desmond Ritter. Jesus Christ. I can't wait for his 20 of 25 for 80-yard stat line. That's going to be unreal. The thing is who's going to out tank each other? Because although the Falcons aren't tanking, it seems like they are. The last month, I mean, if you would have told me that this was a Raiders stat line, if Kirk Cousins played for the Raiders, zero touchdowns, 10 interceptions, like it's been ugly. and I'm a big Kirk Cousins truther, as you know, Hall of Fame uh, jacket, ideally.
Oh,
But
truther.
but ultimately, like this game, first of all, why is this a primetime game when there's Detroit and Buffalo, Philly and Pittsburgh, Tampa and LA? No, we get to watch the fucking Falcons, who have lost the last 4 games. Kirk Cousins playing like complete dog shit against a team who is actively tanking, successfully taking a team that hasn't even been on the worst top 5 because of how good they've been at being bad. That's the game we get to see on Monday night, along with the other Monday night game, which we'll go over in a second. I don't even want to pick a game because I'm more disgusted that they're putting this on prime time right around the holidays. Is this America's punishment for being, I don't know, evil and wicked or whatever people think America is? Like this just feels like a punishment for us for watching football the last 15 weeks. Like what is this? Why are we watching the Falcons and Raiders on prime time? And why is it on ESPN? And it's not even going to be on ESPN Plus. So what you paid $10 a month for, you have to go on either an illegal streaming service, which we wouldn't do, or you have to have fucking cable. Give me a fucking break, guys. No, fuck this game. I'm not even going to review it, even though
Bruh.
I think the Raiders are still going to lose.
It's like this game, it's like, oh yeah, we're so worried about the players getting CTE. Well, apparently the people making the schedule have CTE too. So there we go. Monday Night Football, Falcons and Raiders. Like, honestly would rather watch the Cardinals and Patriots at this point. I
It's
really
going to
would.
be. Ugh,
I feel
this is.
like Jets. I feel like Jets and Jaguars would be a more hilarious game to have on Monday Night Football. This game is just like a migraine waiting to happen.
This is a game that if the Falcons lose, they have to bench Kirk Cousins. You can't lose to the Raiders. The Raiders want to lose. They know that if they just keep sucking, they're going to get Shador Sanders. If you lose to the Raiders, I don't care how much of a Hall of Famer you are, you cannot, you can't lose at this point. You've already you lost your division. Now you missed the playoffs, and now you've lost 5 consecutive games. Now, this could be the end of Kirk Cousins if he loses this game, which we'd hate to see. And then the
Yeah,
last Monday night game. Um, unless there's any other things to mention about this horrible game.
no. Let me
Um,
be free.
let me be free.
Free
Last
me.
game to talk about is the Bears and Vikings. This game, it's an NFC North game, so maybe it'll be exciting. Maybe the Chicago Bears will score more than my hand in the first half this time around. More passing yards, more yards in general. Maybe I'll even have to put it on 2 hands if I'm lucky. But they are favored at a touchdown, over under of 43 and a half in Minnesota. I think I deserve to respect the Vikings enough um, to pick the Vikings. I mean, the Bears had 4 yards in the first half. They don't have a head coach. Caleb Williams, I feel bad for him, but also you had 4 yards in the first half. How am I supposed to defend you when you have, like, here we go. I have more yards in my hand than the Bears had all of the first half against the 49ers. So therefore, I'm not picking the Bears to win a single game for the rest of the season. And for the Vikings, they deserve my respect. I picked them to cover. I think they'll win. And I think Sam Darnold solidifies his comeback player of the year with this particular win. So good for him.
Yeah, he should. I mean, what is he coming back from? Like, did he
Sucking.
leave the league? Yeah, he's coming back from sucking, but like maybe he wins like most improved player in the league this year. But like, I hate when players who like didn't come back from anything win comeback player of the year, especially someone like Sam Darnold. But this is a situation where the Vikings know the assignment. They still have their eyes on the 1 seed, and it's really not far out of reach here because if you're them, you look at the injuries that the Lions have had on their defense, you're Kevin O'Connell, you feel like you can expose that, and you have one of the most dynamic offenses, and you chose the exact right time for Justin Jefferson to have his first touchdown in 2 months. Him and Jordan Addison absolutely explode. They're starting to click at the exact right time, and they like took it up a complete another level versus an Atlanta Falcons defense that has started to get worse, but was formidable to start the year. And now you have TJ Hawkinson slowly starting to come back in the fold here. Like, this is a Vikings team that, still could get the number 1 seed and a bye in the NFC this year, potentially lose like that first game, but like you play the Lions again, and if the Lions, somehow drop another game, it's like if you're Minnesota, you're thinking of one seed. So I don't think you're gonna be messing around with Chicago. And the last game proved that hey, the Vikings are on a mission, and the fact that they're playing the best football they have all season right now, where you started out the year hot, kind of leveled out after you start 5-0, you lose two games in a row. Then you haven't really lost since. You had some ugly games along the way, but you're starting to now re-kick it into high gear, and then you're starting to pick up the momentum in the most important time of the year, which is heading into the playoffs. So I definitely think that the Vikings will be able to go out there, handle the Chicago Bears, and then all bets are off the table. It's like this is a team that still has their eyes on the one seed, and it's not that far fetched.
Yeah, and let's not forget. I mean, this past time that they played, um, it was close. Don't get me wrong, but the Bears lost in heartbreaking fashion. So I just don't trust the Bears to play a game successfully and win a game at this point. With how bad they've been coached, with just all the woes that this team has had, I just don't see them beating the Vikings on Monday Night Football.
No,
But
I don't see it.
we previewed every game in Week 15. We talked about hell. We even talked about the American Psycho remake. We talked about Bill Belichick going to the Tar Heels. But there's one thing we have yet to do. That's right. Get it out there. The documents. I see them behind you. It's time before we end the show here today to talk about. We last episode we talked about the worst of the worst. It's time to get that glass half full. Talk about the best of the best. The pillars of greatness. The definition of success. The top 5 teams according to the Brickyard entering Week 15.
Yeah, the top 5 teams according to the Brickyard heading into week 15. And these are the teams that you need to have your eyes set on. These are some of the teams that will be contending at the end of the year, and some of the units that we hoped would be contending at the end of the year. And at number 5, we have a team that has a quarterback who some say should have been buried out of the league. He's bounced around the league a little bit here, but he's been able to stay strong this season. He only has 2 losses, and now we're looking at a Minnesota Vikings team peaking at the exact right time where you have Brian Flores coaching up the defense here, Jordan Addison, who's dealt with injuries, and then Justin Jefferson, who's had a hard time finding the end zone. Kind of had a Julio Jones and Matt Ryan thing going on with Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson, where Julio Jones was getting a lot of yards, but just wasn't getting into the end zone. And then it all came together in one big moment versus the Atlanta Falcons. And I see the Vikings building momentum off of that. This is a team that I just like the coach better than Nick Sirianni, which is why I'm leaving the Eagles off of the top 5 this week. And I just like the overall vibe and mission of this locker room. Justin Jefferson saying hi to Kirk Cousins looked like he was in a good place after that game. So at number 5, I have the Minnesota Vikings holding on, coming back into the top 5 according to the Brickyard this year. And then at number 4, we have one of the most dynamic defenses, pass rushing duos in the league, and TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. We have the Steelers, who have just come out here and exceeded expectations this season. They're the only team this year that really hasn't had a bad loss outside of the Kansas City Chiefs. Every team you can point to has had a horrific game where you can point to, like, okay, that was a pretty bad loss for Buffalo, whether it's them, the Philadelphia Eagles, even the Lions had a sluggish game, but the Pittsburgh Steelers lost because of a torrential downpour and a lightning storm on Sunday Night Football, where literally the storm was trying to stop them from playing football, and they still had Justin Fields on their team. You end up losing to the Indianapolis Colts, but since Russell Wilson has taken over, the only game he's lost to is in the snow versus the Cleveland Browns. I just think the Steelers team is in a great position heading into the playoffs because no one's really expecting anything from them. They're playing with house money this year, and Russell Wilson is on a revenge tour. He's out here for redemption, out here throwing for 400 yards, looking better than he has his past few years in Seattle, looking better than he did in Denver. And now Arthur Smith starting to unlock players like Pat Fryermuth, Najee Harris, and Jalen Warren. I really like where this team is headed. So at number 4, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. At number 3, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are out here with a double hex, winning games this year, and they've been able to dominate, win one possession games. They're having a better season than they have had last year. They're the 3-time champions, and you know what? Not really gonna believe that the Chiefs aren't going to win the Super Bowl until I see them in the playoffs this year. But this is a team that's just doing the bare minimum. Talking about what do I need to do to get a passing grade on this assignment? Okay, doing the bare minimum. We've already done that before. They literally just look like a kid filling out a discussion board in college. Like, wow, I agree with you for this reason. Haha. And that's kind of how the Chiefs have treated the regular season this year. But they're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC unless they have a massive fall off because the Buffalo Bills have another tough game ahead of them with the Detroit Lions. So at number 3, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. And at number 2, I have the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions went out there. Yeah, that's right. Number 2, the Detroit Lions. They went out there, won an electric game on Thursday Night Football. They went out there, beat the Green Bay Packers. Dan Campbell doing every single trick in the book to win that game, going for it on 4th and inches. They've been the most dominant team all season. They've only lost one game, so I have to keep the Lions in the top 5. They fluctuated between number 1 and number 2, but there's just another team that's been special enough to earn that number 1 spot here. But at number 2, the Detroit Lions, we all know that they were going to be on this list. And well, at number 1, maybe it's not a complete team. Maybe it doesn't have the full roster on it because I'm leaving off their defense. But at number 1, the best unit in the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals offense. I mean, we've had week after week after week where Joe Burrow is playing his ass off. He's going on a Drew Brees arc here. And I wanted to put the Bengals on the top 5, but the Bengals are not a top 5 team, but their offense is a top 5 unit in the NFL at this point. And all the games that they've lost have been close one possession games, and they're losing to the Steelers, where the Steelers are putting up 40 points. Russell Wilson is throwing for 400 yards. Their secondary is getting absolutely cooked. But on the other side of the ball, Joe Burrow is leading the NFL in pretty much every stat at quarterback this year outside of rushing. You have Jamar Chase leading the NFL. You have Yoshiba at wide receiver coming on strong for you. You have Chase Brown, who's been a really dynamic running back for you and filled the holes in very nicely for Joe Mixon. And then with Zach Moss getting injured this year, and then you have T. Higgins on this team, it's like there's no reason why I can't put the Cincinnati Bengals offense as the number 1 unit in the NFL this year.
I was stunned by that, by the way, because I've heard the Lions at one, I've heard the Chiefs at one, but the Bengals offense, the Bengals might be the first team in Brickyard history to be on the worst top 5 and best top 5 in the same week because their defense horrible, but their offense is like one of the best offenses we've ever seen. I mean, you get rid of Joe Mixon and Chase Brown has been a menace. He's looking like vintage, I think a better version of, but like an Austin Eckler or hell, even like a Christian McCaffrey to a lesser extent. Like he's been amazing. And then Jamar Chase is obviously historic too. He's already had the best receiving season he's already had to this point. And projected, I think they said he's about to, yeah, he's going to have 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns potentially with 122 catches. That's what he's on
Insane.
pace for. And then Joe Burrow is projected to have 5,000 yards and 47 touchdowns. Like top 5 according to the Brickyard.
Yeah, no, top 5. And Joe Burrow could easily finish with 50 touchdowns and miss the
Yeah.
playoffs. It's insane.
Yeah, this is like some Drew Brees shit. I hate it. Like, why can't their defense be competent? Even if like it's going to be the opposite of what the Broncos were with Russ, where if their defense was just bad and not terrible, they'd be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
We called it though early this season. I mentioned this team looks a lot like the Saints did in the past with Drew Brees, where they may go through a while where they're not contending.
Yeah. Well, I hope they can. I hope the Broncos lose 3 of the next 4 and that they sneak in just for the football. I mean, they would have that means they'd either face the Bills or the Ravens in the first round. I don't think they win, but at least they can be in the playoffs. You know, anything can happen in the playoffs.
Yeah, once you're in, you never know. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But you've heard it. Best 5 teams according to Brickyard entering Week 15. We'll be back on Tuesday to recap everything that transpired and more. Make sure you don't miss it. But most importantly, message of all to leave this show:
Stay brick.
stay brick. Dub. That was a stunner. I was so stunned when I heard the Lions at 2. I'm like, what?
I want to leave out the Eagles